Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. As the threat of Trump's tariffs grow closer, what supports do businesses in BC need? And will government aid be enough to help? And what are you doing to ensure your business stays afloat? And happy Lunar New Year. How do you plan on celebrating the Year of the Snake? And what special treats will you eat? I'm Amy Bell in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. And thank you for joining us here on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story. What support will businesses in BC need if tariffs come down this weekend or in the future? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call us at 1-800-825-5950 or just hit pound 690 on your cell. As always, you can email us bctoday@cbc.ca. And as we've been hearing, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to impose 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. The White House administration stated Monday that the plan is, quote, still in the books to implement the fees this Saturday, February 1st. Here in BC, Premier David Eby responding to that threat during a press conference on Tuesday.
Employment insurance for people who are laid off temporarily as employers face canceled orders potentially from the United States, some of which we're hearing already. For businesses where their order books are drying up as their customers try to figure out how to deal with this, that they have access to cash to be able to stay open and to weather this and identify new markets. Whatever it takes to make sure that we come out the other end stronger is very important. Through COVID, we supported businesses here in British Columbia with grants to be able to get through. The federal government had loans. They provided people supports who were laid off through employment insurance. These are the kinds of responses that we expect to see through this period. The projections that we have seen indicate that this could be more serious for our provincial economy than the 2008 recession, and certainly the most severe economic impact we've seen in a while here in Canada and British Columbia. And unfortunately, it'll have significant effects on the Americans as well. I think there's still time for President Trump to work with us, because there is a strong desire on the part of the premiers and the federal government to address the concerns the president has raised. This isn't a fight we asked for. We don't want it. We don't need it. But we are willing to respond to these tariffs proportionately and as is required. We're willing to fight for our country.
That was Premier David Eby speaking at a conference yesterday. So we're asking you, what supports are needed to protect BC businesses from Trump's tariff threats? And if you own a business, what are you doing to prepare for the possible tariffs? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, or email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining us now for a further view is Tom Davidoff. He's a professor at the Sauder School of Business at the University of BC. Thank you for joining us today, Tom.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So what is your reaction to Premier Eby's comments?
Well, there's no question that 25% tariffs are prohibitive in a lot of industries, and so exports to the U.S. would be shut down, certainly diminished, and that's a lot of GDP in a lot of different sectors in Canada and BC particularly. So it's a real disaster if these tariffs come in. One hopes they won't, but who knows? And certainly what the politics is of the best way to handle them, who knows? But certainly he's correct that it's a big problem for the economy potentially.
And I guess, not just the economy, but the sort of the broader implications of this trade conflict for just ongoing Canada-U.S. relations. It seems like it could touch off, sort of these ripple effects into everything.
Well, look, we're being held hostage for something, but the hostage taker hasn't really said what yet, right? I mean, I don't think there's a giant fentanyl or immigration problem coming from Canada into the U.S., so that's fake. Maybe Trump just wants to be seen as fighting for Americans. Maybe he's serious about the statehood thing, which isn't going to happen. So, the longer these tariffs are in place, the worse. And I think it's and not clear what's going to get rid of them. And of course, it's a horrible thing. We have a great relationship. I'm a U.S. and Canadian citizen and have had basically no feelings of conflict on one side or the other. So it's terrible for Trump to insert this. And I guess I'll just apologize on behalf of my fellow citizens who thought it would be a good idea to elect him.
And I think you sort of touch on something. It's that, as you said, we're being held hostage, but our hostage taker hasn't really told us what for, or even when this hostage taking will occur. We had, yesterday, them saying that it was still on the books to come down on Saturday for the tariffs. This morning, we had his candidate for, I believe it was his Commerce Department, saying, if Mexico and Canada come down hard on fentanyl and immigration, then no, there won't be any tariffs on Saturday. They might come on April the 1st, though, and we'll target dairy and we'll target, the auto sector. So it's very difficult. How does a business sort of prepare when they don't know what they have to prepare for? How do we shore up the economy against this sort of wishy-washy, unknown threat?
Well, you asked two questions there.
I did. I apologize.
No. It's great. What do businesses do? And then what does the government do, I suppose? And in terms of businesses, I think the easy answer is you hold off on any large investments that you're thinking of making until the uncertainty is resolved. One thing economists have learned in the last, quarter century or 50 years or so is, when you have uncertainty, you don't want to plow in a big investment until the uncertainty is resolved, which maybe you didn't need a lot of deep analysis to figure out. That's bad, and that's going to mean less capital to employ labor over time, but even in the short run. And that means government needs to step in to stimulate. Now, that's complicated by the fact that the U.S. economy is stronger than the Canadian economy. So we've got currency out of whack, and any government intervention is likely to make the currency gap even worse, as will be the monetary policies we saw. But government must step in to support the economy, just like they had to with COVID.
Well, and Premier Eby spoke yesterday of ways to mitigate that economic harm, such as, a dollar for dollar tariff matching. But is that, really a feasible economic approach, that we sort of lay tariffs back if they lay them on us first, or do we act first so that they don't have a chance to do that?
Game theory's tricky, exactly how you want to signal what. One major problem is, I've heard of, I don't even know if the word is germanium or something, that there's a few bottlenecks on U.S. production that Canada may have, so that certain export bans from Canada to the U.S. might be painful. I think tariffs on U.S. goods into Canada is not a huge threat to Trump, because U.S. exports into Canada are not a very important part of the U.S. economy, whereas Canadian exports to the U.S. are an important part of the Canadian economy. So the problem is we don't have great threats, not to say we shouldn't make them and look for the best opportunities to fight back. I don't know, whether we want to play wimp and roll over, and that just invites further abuse by Trump, or whether we want to try to fight and risk, who knows, an invasion where we lose militarily. It's a very challenging situation to game out.
We did have a call. I believe we just lost him, but he did mention that whatever is required business-wide, he hasn't heard anyone of any sector of government or business use the Columbia River to negotiate with the U.S. and use that as leverage. Is that another avenue for us to sort of protect ourselves?
I have not thought about it, but yeah, obviously anything we can do to fight back might or might not be a good idea. So taking extreme steps, maybe even ex ante, maybe say, no water flows south if you can get away with it until you've promised forever to live by the USMCA. That would be one approach. And again, the other approach is to get down on our knees and say we're going to spend a gazillion dollars to make sure not a gram of fentanyl crosses the border into the U.S.
Right.
somehow.
Okay. Charlene wrote in, my parents grew up during the Depression, then World War II. They were deprived of so much, but they made do. We are asked to tighten our belts in the face of another imperialistic madman. I don't think changing our habits to buy more of and from the country we live in and love is a bad belt tightening and may in the long run be a win for us all, especially food producers and manufacturers. Other countries will always need and want our resources, but they add little along the way. Farmers, manufacturers, and local retailers might just thrive on the extra business and employ more of us as well. That's certainly a very positive way of looking at it, I suppose. Tom, how realistic is that, though, that this could somehow be a benefit for us?
Right. Well, it's funny. She said belt tightening, but I guess she means belt loosening in the sense of trying to spend more to support local business, right?
Yeah.
One problem with recessions is when times go bad, everybody wants to consume less, and that means fewer jobs and more belt tightening. And you want to undo that. And one way is government, and maybe it's jawboning people into doing more to support Canadian businesses. That works for retail. It doesn't work for businesses that fundamentally need the export market of the U.S. So it's not going to go all the way. But sure. I mean, I don't see any harm in extra efforts to support local businesses, but I don't think that's going to be enough to undo the recessionary effects should the 25% tariffs come in.
Especially with so many people already in a state where any extra spending is just not feasible for them due to the economy. Premier Eby did talk about this perhaps being worse than the recession of 2008, I believe. Is that something that you would agree with, that this could have that far-reaching effects?
Yes, I'd have to do some more, at least back of the envelope math, but I think it's something like a quarter of the economy getting crushed. So, assuming you get almost prohibitive tariffs into the U.S., so that is very serious for Canada. We did okay in the great financial crisis relative to other countries. Obviously, the housing market was remarkably unscathed. So yes, no, I think this is a real catastrophe should trade between the U.S. and Canada be majorly disrupted.
Tom, we'll take a call now from Ken. He joins us from Coquitlam. Hi, Ken. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well, thanks.
Thanks for calling in. What are your thoughts on the upcoming tariffs or the possibility of them?
Well, it's very frightening for sure.
And I understand you're a business owner.
Well, that's right. I'm at the low end of things. I do hardwood floors, a luxury business for a living.
And what are your thoughts about what might happen or what we can do to help support businesses like yourselves, but really the entire business sector in BC?
Well, I think it all boils down to the one subject, which is the security of our border, but more, importantly, the ports, because that's where everything's coming in. It's not the land border. So, I mean, until that problem goes away, I think we're going to be on the cooker.
Well, Ken, I appreciate you calling in, and I do hope that you take care and that people will continue to want your flooring services. Tom, that's another issue that has been raised, that we put a lot of focus on border security, whereas the alarms have been raised about our ports as being a major source of illegal activity. Is that something that the government needs to put a bit more power and perhaps funding behind to stop it there?
Yeah, I mean, I have heard ports, like you say, are a bigger source of fentanyl or whatever else illicit's going into the U.S. But I don't want to be too credulous and give Trump credit for, raising a legitimate issue.
No.
I don't think Canadian problems in the U.S. are a big issue and worth disrupting such an important relationship. He's doing some kind of madman theory, trying to get some kind of concessions. I don't know what. Maybe he looks good if we blow a lot of money on ports, but it's not going to make a substantive difference to American lives.
No, and I mean we do have to mention too is for all intents and purposes the fentanyl in our country is harming us here in the Canadian citizens, there's very little of it that is actually crossing the line. The federal government is putting up the possibility of offering what they call pandemic level support to Canadians in the face of an economic crisis. Is that a smart move, economy-wise, to help out Canadians?
Yeah, and I think the pandemic supports get a bit of a bad rap because of the inflation that came out. But had that not happened, the extent of recession globally, had governments said, well, you're on your own, everybody, during the pandemic, it could have been really crushing. So that was the right response, led to a bit of global inflation. Here, I don't think we have a big inflation risk because of the deflationary effects of the tariff. You get distortions because some sectors aren't as affected by the tariffs. But yes, I think government will absolutely need to step up with fiscal stimulus. That's going to be challenging during prorogation. And, the next government might be more focused on deficits than sort of Keynesian intervention to support a weak economy. So then you get to the central bank and rate cuts. And fortunately, we've got some room for those.
And speaking of proroguing government, we're in a tricky position right now with these tariffs possibly coming down as early as February 1st, while our government is not coming back together until March. Is there a danger of things slowing down or falling through the cracks because we don't have the ability to act as quickly as possible?
Absolutely, and that's why the central bank may need to step in. The Globe and Mail, I don't have any inside knowledge on this, but suggested today there's going to be gamesmanship because, the Liberals might want to bring back a very short sitting of Parliament.
Exactly.
And then will the opposition party say, aha, you opened the door, that's it, no confidence. And, you're in the middle of your nomination process when there's a national election. Or do they play ball and say, hey, look, this is a crisis. We'll leave the status quo of election comes later. Who knows, right? Because politicians are known for putting their own interests ahead of policy best practice.
It has occasionally been known to happen, yes, Tom. In terms of getting back to sort of a business point of view, that brings up another point in that how is a business expected to plan for the future, whatever that may be, when there are so many variables up in the air right now, whether the tariffs come down, whether government comes back into sitting, whether there's an election? How difficult is it for the business community right now to just maintain, let alone plan for the future?
It's very difficult. I was speaking to a small exporter to the U.S. This past weekend who mentioned, first of all, he becomes completely non-competitive with 25% tariffs. So he just anticipates all his business in the U.S. would go away with tariffs.
Right.
In the short run, though, I don't believe his contracts with his counterparties in the U.S. to whom he exports even anticipate tariffs. So one step is risk mitigation and making sure your contracts specify who pays in the event of duties being charged on your exports to the U.S. that weren't there previously or come in at a higher level. So, being careful with contracting is one thing. And again, being flexible. I don't expect to see people sinking a lot of investment into businesses that rely on exports to the U.S. until this uncertainty is at least temporarily resolved.
Right. And it just seems to keep getting pushed further and further. Now we're hearing April 1st could be a second wave of tariffs that would target dairy and the automotive sector, regardless of what may or may not happen on the 1st. I do want to get to a call from Jim. I know he's in Nanaimo and doesn't have that much time to wait. So Jim, thank you for calling in and waiting.
Well, thank you kindly. I think the Americans have never been our friends. They pay lip service to it, but they're driven by greed and what's in their interest. And, we're good neighbors. We come up with agreements. We obey our agreements. That's one thing the Americans are not known for. Trump is a classic example. He's extreme, but it's not uncommon for us to be extorted economically by either stripe whenever there's a trade issue. So let's do this. We've got the TPP with 3 times the market share of the United States. That agreement's in place. We have CETA with Europe. That's twice the market share of the United States. That's 5 times the market share. Mm-hmm. And if our businessmen would stop being lazy and diversify, which they should have, and then we wouldn't be routinely economically extorted. And I would also put NORAD on a 6-month review, and we're subsidizing their defense, not ours. Russia's not coming for us. They're coming after the Americans. So let's get out of NORAD. That should wake up a few people in the States and use that billions that we're putting into it and buy, I don't know, perhaps 80 to 100 truck-mounted medium-range nuclear missiles. That will take care of the Russians if they want to come across, but it'll also take care of the United States if, as your guest had said, if they did come across the border militarily. Could have a missile in New York in a minute. That will sort that problem out. It'll go away, but we got to get the lazy businessman to diversify overseas, and let's stop being extorted by the Americans.
All right.
And we just don't need them anymore. We need them in the short term, but that's our fault. And I mean, cut off their oil. If they want to go elsewhere, that's fine. There's lots of markets for our oil, lots of markets for our natural gas, and also our rare earth minerals. Geranium, for example, China cut them off. We cut the Americans off. They're stuck. They can get it from Kazakhstan or Russia. But they owe us a lot, and we owe them, frankly, nothing for getting kicked around year after year.
Jim, I thank you. I thank you for calling in. We're running out of time, and you've got so many points there. And Tom, you know, that's not the first person I've sort of heard say, cut them off. We need to sever this relationship we have with them that always leaves us open to them coming in with these threats. As I mentioned, we're running out of time, but just quickly, if you could speak to that, how feasible is that?
Well, it would be great if every country in the world said, that's it, you know, no trade with the U.S. until Trump gets on his knees and says he'll never impose a tariff again.
Right.
You never see that kind of international cooperation, unfortunately. And just to the diversification, I don't know that it's lazy of businesses. My colleague Keith Head and John Reese are gained fame by pointing out that so much of trade can be explained by just physical distance. Mm-hmm. So it's so natural for the U.S. to be the strongest partner in terms of trade from Canada. And obviously, the best solution is to restore and maintain that relationship. But yes, not just Canada, but other countries are going to be looking to China, unfortunately, in the event that the U.S. goes bananas.
Tom, I thank you so much. We are flat out of time, but always a pleasure to talk to you. That was Tom Davidoff, a professor at the Sauder School of Business at UBC, and he joined us in Vancouver. It is 12:28, and this is BC Today. And we received a lot of emails about disinformation. Here's what some of you had to say. Pre-internet, misinformation was kept in line by libel and slander laws. With online anonymity, those laws have been rendered moot. We are on the leading edge of the disintegration of the information age. That was from Donna in Victoria. This one says, I look for trusted sources for my news and information, including primary sources, those who are experts in their areas, and ideally more than one primary source. Trusted news agencies who have a proven track record of fact-checking and hiring well-trained reporters. Also, I find it helpful to look at science-backed evidence, which are large studies and or meta-studies, not small studies or those not peer-reviewed. I'm leery of news or spokespersons on social media who are presenting an opinion, political leaning, or a preference which is not backed up by good expertise. Primary sources, critical thinking, analysis. Thank you to Lori in Machosen for that. And differentiating real news, the facts from fake news or made-up stuff is easy. I don't rely on social media for any news at all. I only read or listen to professional news sources like the CBC for general, truthful information. That was from Robert. Thank you all so much for your thoughtful calls. We will have a look at Lunar New Year feasts coming right up on BC Today. And thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, CBC TV, and live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. The CBC News is next.
Good afternoon. Canada's premiers have been meeting with the Prime Minister to once again shape a response to the threat of U.S. tariffs. That response is expected to include a stimulus package similar to supports during the COVID pandemic. It would also likely include retaliatory tariffs. BC's Children's Representative says a staggering number of families of young people with disabilities are at their breaking point in an underfunded system that is almost impossible to navigate. The latest report from Jennifer Charlesworth says up to 83,000 young people with disabilities are not receiving adequate services. It says spending increased by 190% over the last 18 years, but the majority of that money went to salaries and a narrow set of programs. And Dr. Brian Day's private medical clinic here in Vancouver has been ordered to pay the province's legal costs for the unsuccessful constitutional challenge of the public healthcare system. Canby Surgeries launched legal action in 2009, claiming the province's Medicare Protection Act blocks people from accessing private health care. And now the forecast on the north coast, a chance of showers this afternoon with the temperature falling to 2, highs around 4 with a mix of sun and cloud in the peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, periods of snow with a high of 2 degrees. Highs from -5 to -1 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, mainly sunny with a high of 0. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, lots of sunshine this afternoon with highs around 6 degrees. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
And thank you for that, Robert, and happy Lunar New Year to you.
Yes, thank you, Amy.
And our friends at On the Coast are really ramping up their Lunar New Year's coverage this afternoon. Here's what they have coming up.
Amy, hello there. It's Gloria Makarenko here, and thanks again for sitting in for me on the Coast for a few weeks. I appreciate that. So, on the Coast this afternoon, we're going to be talking about the Lunar New Year. We'll talk about some of the legends behind the New Year and get some predictions for the Year of the Snake as well. Also, the Vancouver Boat Show is back at BC Place, so we'll bring you up to date on the wide world of recreational boating. One of our story producers, Caroline Chan, she's going to the show, so she'll be bringing us some live reports. Lots lined up, so I hope you can join us between 3 and 6 for On the Coast.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And of course, you can hear On the Coast on CBC Radio 1 in Metro Vancouver and anywhere on the CBC News app. And the Lunar New Year kicks off today. Many celebrations are planned to welcome the Year of the Snake, including the annual parade in Chinatown in Vancouver this Sunday, February 2nd, and CBC will be part of that, as will I. Another big part of the new year is food. It's always a big part of the festivities. So we're asking you, what dishes are important to your Lunar New Year celebrations? And what are your questions about preparing a Lunar New Year feast? Call us at 1-800-825-5950 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell. And you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. You can also call us in if you do have a New Year greeting for any of your loved ones. Justin Cheung is co-owner of Potluck Hawker Eatery in Vancouver. And he joins me with some delicious looking and smelling Lunar New Year treats. Hi, Justin.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
This looks incredible and it smells incredible. I am sorry for everybody that's not in studio with us right now. Your restaurant, it's kind of like the Lunar New Year in that it spans a number of Asian cultures. So tell us about your restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole word of potluck is, like a community a gathering, sharing, conversations and food as well. So obviously potluck, we have an array of different noodles, which is, symbolizes longevity. During Lunar New Year, we also have like fried prawns and stuff like that. So it symbolizes like laughter and stuff like that. So there's something for everyone. The idea of potluck is, shared dishes and, shared conversations as well.
Yeah, and I love that there's sort of, that thought that goes into the food and the meaning behind it and gathering those ingredients that perhaps are special and something that people won't have necessarily all year round to sort of set the tone for the new year and share that with your friends and your loved ones. I'm curious, what does the Lunar New Year mean to you personally?
Of course, I mean, I grew up here, which is very multicultural. Yeah. My dad is from Hong Kong, so we celebrated Lunar New Year every year. My mom's from Malaysia, which is the inspiration of our restaurants. So it's like a melting pot of Southeast Asian cuisine and cultures, and we're just excited to share it together.
And why is food so important when it comes to welcoming in the new year?
I think it's just always having a sense of, I think there's a saying that it's just like, have you eaten yet? And that's just something that, welcoming someone into your household. And that's pretty much what potluck is for us as well. We want each guest to come in and feel like they're welcome. So it's with food, with drink, with laughter.
When you were growing up, was there a certain food or a dish that was made for you or a treat that you looked forward to at New Year that you still have those memories of? I find food can be such a huge sort of nostalgic. You remember the taste and what you felt like when you were eating it at a certain point in time.
For sure. I mean, I think there's an array of different flavors. That could be making dumplings, making noodles. For me, it was even just cooking with my mom and my brother and my dad. So I think those sort of things really resonate and, brings back those memories as well.
What would you, sort of recommend if somebody was really wanting to make something for the new year to celebrate and to share with their friends and family? This is obviously beyond the realm of most people.
Yeah.
But what is something that they could do to sort of, put themselves in, put their love into it and share that with people?
I think it's really looking back at your culture, looking back at family. Those are really important keys. So whether you have memories making dumplings together or, our other restaurant, Street Hawker, we wanted to put all those thoughts into a burger as well, right? And celebrating the Year of the Snake. So we did a barbecue eel burger with a, smash burger as well.
Delicious.
So really, I think it's just about bringing back memories, looking at what you have and what things you've cooked in the past and just have fun with it, really.
Is there anything traditionally that would be bad luck to serve?
I don't know if there's,
Good.
I look at more of those auspicious dishes, whole fish is good, whole chicken,
Okay.
Noodles and stuff like that. There's obviously, you can get into little details and there's many, many different dishes,
I love it. This seems to be, with the burger, it's kind of maybe a more modern, some might say, twist on a traditional food that you perhaps would have for the new year. As somebody that is of a younger generation, do you feel that people are searching for more modern ways to celebrate these older traditions, or people still gravitating to do what their parents did and what their grandparents did?
I think it's a little bit of a hybrid, right?
Yeah.
You have memories of certain things that you've eaten and you want to bring those to the next generation, whether if you have young kids or like I do myself, or we want to create new ones as well.
Yeah.
So just like the looseness of the word potluck, it's really celebrating everyone's culture at the same time.
I think that's lovely. And you said you have your own little ones now.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So how do they feel about the Chinese New Year? Is that something, or the Lunar New Year? Is that something that they really look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, it's still like a teaching process,
Yeah.
and it's like sharing sort of memories, looking back at photo albums, and we're not super traditional in the way we dress all the time, but sometimes we have an outfit, and we talk about the food that we eat.
Yeah.
And and it's just about exploring those experiences.
Well, let's address the food in the room, because as I said, the smell in here is just incredible. It looks incredible, and I appreciate all the hard work that's been gone into these dishes. So what are some of the offerings that Potluck Hawker has for everyone this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So here are some different noodle dishes that we have. We have the mee goreng, which is like sort of derived from like Malaysia and Indonesia. Also char kway teow, which is a stir-fried rice noodle with prawns and Chinese sausage. It's a dish that's really important to me because my uncle had a hawker stall in Malaysia, so that's kind of the inspiration of how it came to be. And then pad thai, stir fried with like some house pressed tamarind sauce and fried tofu and stuff like that.
Incredible. Yeah. And then the burger.
And then
tots there.
Exactly. So we spice these up with some 5 spice. We have the year of the snake burger, and also like the we call it the red envelope shake, which is like it's got some red bean and white chocolate as well.
Sounds delicious. I'm going to taste it. I'm going to sample it in a little bit. But we would love people to call in, email what you're doing to celebrate the Lunar New Year. If there's any foods or feasts that have special significance for you, you can call us here at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. We have Potluck Hawker co-owner Justin Cheung with us. I'm sure he would be more than happy to answer any of your food-related questions, but we would just love to hear what you're doing to celebrate the Year of the Snake. What does the Year of the Snake mean for you? Are you looking forward to it? I know there are some people hear snake and they instantly are a little turned off.
I mean, last year I think it was the dragon.
It was
right?
the dragon, yes.
I mean, I think for a lot of people, it's the same as Western culture. Like you may have had some good moments, bad moments. It's looking forward to turning the page and wishing everyone blessings on a new year of health and prosperity.
And are you looking forward to anything in particular?
Just always a balance. Looking forward to spending more time with my family and just try to find that balance between restaurant life and family. So,
that is tough. And how long have you been in the restaurant industry? Was this something you always knew you wanted to do?
I've been cooking for over 20 years. I've always been fascinated with arts. I wanted to be a graphic designer. And then, I kind of just took up cooking as a way to, cook for my sibling and my family and stuff like that. And then that sort of stuff brings you joy, right?
Yeah.
So, it's a different way of expressing yourself.
I love that. And it's a way of sort of bringing everybody together and sharing a little bit of yourself through the food that you've created. And I just find there's something that crosses through all cultures. Like, it's amazing to me how food is always such a unifying force, how it is always around these sort of key celebrations and hope for the new year. I love that everybody kind of does that at the same time. Are there other traditions that that you've been exposed to, not necessarily just Lunar New Year, but that you love the approach to food being included in them?
You can look at it any season, any time, right? I mean,
we're always looking for an excuse to eat.
Christmas season is a big one with my family,
Yeah.
So we share sort of a lot of Asian and Western sort of experiences growing up.
Do you find there's ever a lot of pushback to sort of that very traditional sense in food and preparation with bringing in more modern ways? Do you ever sense a pushback from your family, the people that you've grown up with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we all often talk about what's authentic, and which is really important. And everyone has their own interpretation of what authentic is, right?
Yeah.
So, like myself, I was born and raised here, grew up here. I've done some travel, but like just say that my food is just an expression of what that is, right? It's trying to get as close as I can to the flavors that my mom cooks, But to be honest, like we don't have the same ingredients here as there, right?
True.
The ingredients fly over here, they change on the way. So a lot of it's like when you're trying to take a modern approach to it, or some people may see it as a modern approach, it's really, so you're dealing with the cards that you have and making it special, right?
Yeah.
So.
No, I love that. Okay, I think it's time to do a little bit of tasting, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so my heart is set on pad thai.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you to slide that over
Yeah.
to me. Because everybody loves to watch me eat on air. It's always.
Are you okay with peanuts?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let's get some of that for you.
This is the best part of the job. They don't teach you that in broadcasting school, but occasionally you get really good food, so I will take it when I can.
There you go.
All right. And so what is in a traditional pad thai?
So the noodles we get is also it's a fresh noodle. So it's got like a little bit of a chewy sort of texture, which is very important in Asian culture. We stir fry with some shallots, some preserved radish for saltiness and crunch. Yeah, and then we cook it into like a sauce that we house press tamarind, which is sort of a sour fruit. Fish sauce,
Amazing.
tofu. Yeah.
This is so good. Keep talking. I'm just going to keep eating them.
I think people like hear you eat, right? Isn't that the?
That's the thing. Yes. For all your mukbang needs, come to
Yeah.
BC today.
Do you want a lime with it?
I'm okay. Don't worry about that.
All right.
And then let's see. Maybe I can try some of those tots. Pass those over.
Which one?
Try some of the tots.
There you go.
I'm a bit of a tot connoisseur, so these have.
Let's get
5
some of
points.
that sauce for you.
And again, if people want to share their Lunar New Year celebrations or the foods that mean so much to you, just call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And of course, we can answer any of your questions if you have them. For Justin Cheung. He's the co-owner of Potluck Hawker Eatery in Vancouver, and he's brought in delightful treats. So tell me about your specials. Is there just specials for tonight? Is this ongoing for a bit for the new year?
Yeah, so we're running the special at Street Hawker throughout all of New Year. Probably we'll run it, through February as well, so everyone has a chance to try it. And then at Potluck, we change our menu quite frequently, so we often have different set menus, and right now we're offering some of this on the dine-out menu as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to ask.
So
about
we're doing
dine-out.
a $28 menu, and it includes a house-made drink, a snack, and a main course as well.
And we were talking. I suppose it's worth asking as a a co-owner of a business, talking about sort of the economy and the threat of Trump's tariffs. How does it feel right now? You're sort of in this time of trying to celebrate this weekend.
Yeah.
And you have this looming over you that possibly could be coming down. How is that making you feel?
I mean, of course, it makes everyone nervous, right?
Yeah.
It affects everyone. But we've been through a lot of hardship, with the economy, with COVID and everything, and somehow we'll get through it as well.
And I think a lot of people forget that a lot of businesses still sort of in that recovery spot from post-COVID.
Yeah.
So we were all trying to think of ways to support local businesses, and obviously this is a very delicious way
If
to
anything,
do it.
it'll bring us together more, support
so.
each other more, and so
Yeah,
forth.
and we definitely need more of that. What are you sort of mentioned some of the foods that have special meaning in them for the new year? What are some of the sort of key ingredients or certain foods that you would recommend somebody include in their meal if they really want to stick to those traditional foods?
I think dumplings is the easy one.
Yeah.
It's fun. Like I do it with the kids all the time. Not all the time, but they often ask me, and it's just a communal thing where you make the filling and everyone gets a hand in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good one. Any sort of noodle, even like pasta is okay, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, whole fish and whole chicken. Like, if you're up to cooking, like sort of bigger scale dishes, those are often good as well.
And what does the whole fish or the whole chicken symbolize? Is there something special there behind it being whole?
Yeah, I think it's just utilizing the whole dish, and it just symbolizes, a unity as well.
Great. We've got an email that just came in from Caroline. Kung Hei Fat Choi, she writes, our daughter-in-law and her family are originally from Malaysia. For the past 21 years, we have celebrated Chinese New Year and always look forward to the festivities. This year is no exception. I have attached a short video clip of this year's fortune salad toss that we enjoyed with our company, our co-in-laws, granddaughters, and of course, our son and daughter-in-law, who together did all the chopping and slicing. All the best for the year of the snake, and we'll have to check out that video later. But I love hearing those stories where it's just, they look forward to it every year, and they bring in the new generations, and everybody takes part. And
yeah, it's just the funness of it. I mean, that salad is a great example of that. So that's it's a lot of work. It's a lot of shredding vegetables, and it's got some raw fish and sort of a sweet and sour sauce. And and you really just toss it high for good luck. And it's just once again, it's about enjoying food, but also celebrating together and striking those conversations.
When I sort of not being raised with any of these traditions or this type of food, in my life when I was growing up, and I've made a point to really explore that as an adult, I still find it very intimidating to think about cooking certain dishes or sort of feasts for anybody. What's your recommendation for somebody that is wanting to embrace this and explore this, but is feeling that trepidation?
Yeah, I mean, there's nowadays there's a lot of meal kits out there and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's also in this generation, there's a lot of information out there. You can Google, YouTube, and just like I said, just have fun with it. Noodles is a great one because you can, take whatever you have in your fridge or your pantry, right? And you can ask others for different sauce ideas. But there's a lot of sort of pre-made sauces that are pretty good out there as well.
Yeah, it's not cheating.
Yeah. So it's not about cheating, but it's really about just exploring it. The more you cook it, the more you start to identify different flavors that you enjoy, and that's how it evolves from there.
And I think too, maybe I need to take my own advice. Just it doesn't have to be perfect.
It doesn't.
I always expect the first time I try something, it somehow has to be perfect. But I embrace the imperfections.
For sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in, for sharing all of this food, and we will continue to share it with the rest of the staff here.
Kung Hei Fat Choi, and thank you for all the wonderful questions.
Oh, all the best to you and your family in the new year.
Well.
Thank you. Justin Cheung is co-owner of Potluck Hawker Eatery in Vancouver. And there's no shortage of food to try during the Lunar New Year. When you think of these festivities, as we've mentioned, there's one staple bound to make its way to most restaurant menus. We're talking about dumplings. Our Shivani Joshi visited a dim sum restaurant in Chinatown where she learned how to make dumplings.
It's just a way of reconnecting to your heritage, reconnecting to your culture, and reconnecting with your family. A lot of us, we only see each other once a year or maybe twice a year, and at those times, are so important to reconnect with each other.
The Lunar New Year welcomes prosperity, fortune, and luck. But for many, it's the food that brings people together and keeps traditions alive.
At home, what we used to do was it was just pork, some peas, a little bit of cabbage in it, and my dad would get off work and then make the filling. We'd all gather together, and my grandparents would start making the wrappers.
No, take one of my good ones. For William Liu, the owner of Cam Wai Dim Sum, dumplings are a bridge to his heritage and his childhood.
My grandparents used to hand roll the wrappers hundreds at a time, pass them out to all the grandchildren, all the kids, and we just all get together, start wrapping them, and then and then we would just chat, have a good time, and that's what makes it so special.
Cam Wai was opened by his father in 1991 and has adapted to Chinatown's changing landscape as Liu efforts to make his culture and food accessible to everyone.
That's one thing that I try really, really hard to do here at Cam Wai. People that are second, third, fourth generation that are trying to reconnect with their heritage come to Chinatown and they don't know where to start. I wanted to make sure that everybody had access to information the knowledge, same knowledge that I have right now, and I want to be able to pass it down to the future generations. So all of our products have shelf labels with all the ingredients, so you know what's in there, what your grandparents put in there, just pushing it out.
As he folds these dumplings, he's shaping a connection to the past, to his family, and to the generations that will carry these traditions forward.
It just brings people together.
The dumplings William taught me to make are popular during the Lunar New Year because of their shape similar to an ingot, a gold bar.
We kind of like to think of it as we're stuffing our faces with little gold nuggets. And I've actually had friends, families where the grandparents would put a gold coin inside one of the dumplings.
Oh,
and whoever
a lottery.
Yeah, exactly. So whoever gets it, they get all the luck for the year.
They're the luckiest ones.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool. Did you ever get it?
I never got it.
Oh.
I never got it. But that's why I'm continuing making all the dumplings.
Every fold, every filling holds a piece of history and a little bit of luck for the future.
Hey, it's actually pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Is this good?
She said much better. So.
Shivani Joshi, CBC News, Vancouver.
I think that was some excellent dumpling making. And yes, of course, in our last segment, we were lucky enough to try some of the wonderful offerings from Potluck Hawker Eatery in Vancouver. So definitely check them out with their Lunar New Year menu and fine foods. It's certainly delicious. And just a huge best of the new year, the year of the snake, to everybody out there.